Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. Today we are going to talk about your life purpose. Welcome to the Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can sparkle just a little bit brighter each and every day. If what you hear speaks to your soul, go ahead and give us a rating and a review in iTunes. You can also find us on SoundCloud and Stitcher. And hey, if there's somebody in your life that you think would enjoy this podcast, go ahead and share it with them. Well, hey there, Nick.
Hello, Kisma.
How are you and what's going on?
I'm doing well. Feeling good. Excited for this topic tonight, as always. This is a big one. Always very exciting to talk about this and really meaningful and everything like that.
Yeah, you chose the topic, so you must be excited.
I am. I think it's really important. I think it's a very important topic. I think a lot of people look for this, seek it out, and just get confused in the process, get kind of like lost in it, and frankly speaking, get into some really weird stuff that is just not productive. So,
life purpose. Well, let me ask a question before we dive in. If we were to go back, to the time when, say, the United States of America was being settled and people were building the little settlements in the towns and trading and developing the country, I mean, life purpose then seemed to be very different from what we hear people are seeking now, or at least the people that come to us and want to know about life and soul's purpose. Would that be correct?
Well, yeah, I think we've definitely evolved in certain ways where we're not in the place of constant survival.
Yeah.
Especially in the United States.
Right.
Which is awesome. Like, we have the opportunity to actually pursue this in a really meaningful way here without, getting so caught up in, making sure you don't freeze in the winter.
Right. And that there's food on the table, or it just seemed, even with my parents who both were children of, immigrants, it was such a survival life purpose, which was to stay alive and survive.
Yeah. Did your folks were Great Depression, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that my grandparents, and it was just like
tough.
Yeah. Because it was like that was something that just never really left, you know, in certain ways, like that left imprints on people that just never, I don't think ever really got resolved and then got passed on, and all kinds of really like bizarre thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really good point. We have the opportunity to pursue this in a really powerful way, and not taking advantage of that, I feel like is, really a disservice.
It's a disservice to ourselves and really to the planet, right?
Yeah.
When we start to, or when we land in our life's purpose, and when we are really doing what we're here to do, which, by the way, doesn't have to be a huge Mother Teresa kind of thing, but as we elevate our own frequency, we elevate the planet as well.
Yep. And
the people who we love, the people around us.
Yeah. You light everybody up.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, really important, but that doesn't happen when you're constantly in a struggle or constantly just feeling lost and confused, which is super common. A lot of people are stuck in systems, stuck in jobs, and stuck in lives that just really don't feel congruent with who they are anymore, but can't really see their way out.
Yeah.
Like they're just like looking and trying to feel connected to something bigger, and they turn to religion, they turn to weird esoteric practices, they try to meditate their way out of it. Like there's all these funny things that people try to do to feel that connection, and I don't even think it's so much about the connection as it is just about feeling aligned. And when
purposeful,
when you're in that sense of alignment, that like everything that you do matters.
Yeah.
And it adds a sense of intention, and that sense of intention really adds power and clarity to your life, and lights you up and lights up everybody around you.
And I imagine, we could go with so many words to describe what does it feel like to be aligned, and what does it feel like to have your life's purpose right there and to know what it is. But I have a feeling in some ways it's easier to explain what it feels like to not be aligned and to not even have an inkling of what your life purpose is.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that, because I think it's a little different for everybody.
Of course.
And their words around it might be different, but it very is just much a knowing. Like you just know it, and yeah, it's a little like trying to describe, purple to somebody who's never seen purple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what it feels like, I can just speak for me, back. I mean, it's interesting. If you go way back, like, I don't want to go through the whole big story, but, if you go way back for me, like as a kid, I always, like I was a little bit of a weird kid in certain ways. And
tell us, how so? How weird were you?
I was pretty introverted, like I was the kid who, when my friend, I was super happy playing by myself for one.
Yeah.
Like I would
such a loner.
Yeah, just play with my GI Joes and lock. I didn't have a lock on the door, but I'd just like close the door, and I'd be so happy in my room just playing with my GI Joes. My friends would come over and like invite me out to play. My mom would come up and get me, and I'd be like, oh, just tell them I can't right now or something. Like I'm happy, like I'm good.
Send him away,
right? So I was like that kid, But I had an interest in something, I don't know that I could articulate it as like spirituality or personal growth or anything like that at the time. I just knew that there was something more, and I'd known that for a really long time.
Right.
So, and it was something that kept coming back to me. So it kind of showed up, like I got distracted with music for a long time, but even throughout that, like I would go through periods where I'd like really light up, like I'd read something and it would just like spark something in me, and I would light up and I would feel like so connected. I would feel like, yeah, like this is it. And then it would just, I don't know, I'd do all these things to like make it go away, start drinking or God knows what, like it wouldn't, I didn't know how to sustain it. And so then I go through these periods of awakening of just feeling like, yeah, I'm here, but then I get really confused because I'd be scared that I was going to lose everybody in my life and just didn't like know how to like manage my relationships. And what if I'm like this totally different person? And like, how do I pursue this in the normal world, but I still want to be a musician? So there's like all these really confusing things. And then it would just kind of go away, and then it would come back, and it just kind of like, it just kept louder.
Cycle.
Yeah, again, and it would just get louder. And every time I'd fall off again, it would just got more and more painful. And the voice would get like louder to me that like, dude, you can't
not do something.
You can't not do something.
Yeah. It is interesting. There's something we call the veil of ignorance. And when the veil of ignorance is lifted, it can be really painful. I guess that's where the saying comes from, ignorance is bliss. Like when you don't know, you're like, oh, la, 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 just going through life. But when you have that inclination, when something has been sparked, when there's the process of what we call someone going through an awakening, just waking up, and that veil of ignorance is lifted, oftentimes one realizes all of the things they might be missing out on or that there's one thing they're not tapped into, and that's really why they're here and what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that nagging kind of thing, it keeps coming back.
It's like a low grade fever.
It is like
it's like a fever.
Yeah,
I know for me, it's painful in my body. It's painful in my emotional body. It's just like something is off. Something is off, and then when things are aligned, it's like easy flow, magical. Not that the world still doesn't deliver its bumps and its, trials and tribulations. But when we're in that alignment, it's so much easier to handle the trials and tribulations.
Well, yeah. You're above, if you think about it like waves, like the waves of the world, and there's just like constant ups and downs and everything like that. When you're really connected to your purpose and just knowing, yeah, like no matter what, I'm here to do what I'm here to do, then you rise above that surface turbulence.
Right.
And it's just it's really is a smoother ride. It doesn't mean that it's easy or that everything's perfect and everything goes your way, but your life does flow with much more harmony, and it is just easier.
Right.
Like your sense of priorities are different, so it's easier to make choices. You have a much greater sense of clarity, and it's too when you're off,
right,
like right away, and that's I think a process of refinement of really just getting really attuned to when you shut down, when you stop, when you say no, and when you get out of that flow. But the more that you do it, the more the more attuned you become.
Okay. So, question, because I have a feeling you might have some tips for people, because I know we hear from people all the time. It's like, I don't know what my life's purpose is. I don't know what my soul's purpose is. I tend, for me, to always come back to my life's purpose is to be the best version of me at all times. I'm certainly not going to, advocate people go and quit your jobs and go chase a dream that you haven't really developed. And then in 6 months, you don't have any money and your family's suffering. I think that there's like an array of how this life purpose can show up. And it's got to start with us being the best version of ourselves, don't you think?
You deal with your being first, I think is important, because you have to get that sorted out unless you're just independently wealthy and don't need to make money.
Yeah, but you still have to deal with your own integrity and your own internal energetic alignment.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Like while you're sorting that out, that can be super disruptive to careers and relationships and all kinds of things. So if you're free and clear and you can just, and independently wealthy and you can just go do that, I guess go ahead and go do that. But ultimately then you're still going to run into a problem of it not being connected to your action in the world. So it brings us back to square one, which is like deal with your being, like deal with who you're being right now. We've said this in previous podcasts, but ultimately spiritual development, self-development, spiritual enlightenment, self-development, basically it's the same thing. Like just start where you are, and you have to deal with who you're being first before you change anything.
Right.
Because you can go and change all the other stuff, like you change your relationship. I'm with the wrong person. Maybe you are, right? But if you don't change who you're being, you're going to attract that same person back.
Exactly.
And some, with a different face or, whatever.
And maybe your life purpose, this is an awfully big life purpose to go and feed the poor in India. But if you don't deal with yourself, you will not be able to handle the streets of India. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So a couple of tips here. What do you think?
Well, the first thing is just knowing who you are at a soul level. You have to have that information.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
That's vital. Just train of truth.
Train of truth. Soul level.
There are fundamental energies for a soul, and basically every human being will have somewhere where they call home. There's eight different primary energies,
and we all have all of them, but there's one that will take up about 50 to 60%.
Right. For where you are right now. Right. As the fully actualized person will totally embody all of them. Right. But just a human being will have one place that they call home. And that's really important, if you just understand that piece and understand some of the gifts that come with that, right? What feels really natural to you, and also some of the pitfalls of that, then you can know kind of what to look out for. So let's talk about you.
Yeah.
You soul energy, primary soul energy, called divine self-expression.
Yeah, I got to express myself, people.
Yes, she does.
I do. And when I don't, it hurts.
You can hear her even on the podcast is like with the like she makes these little noises, right? Like they're cute, but that's a pretty normal thing for that soul energy. Like they need to express, like, and it comes out in all these different ways. Yeah. I don't want you to be self-conscious about it now, but
yeah. Thanks a lot. Well, yeah. And so for a divine self-expression person, this can come out in words. You want to talk. The imbalance of it is, I'm not being heard. Right. So I'm not being heard, or we call it the shadow self of it is you're talking incessantly in an inappropriate way, right? No one else is going to be able to get a word in. I know many musicians who express themselves through divine self-expression through their music.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they might not say a word, but they'll be really, really expressive.
Yeah, which is what I did for most of my life until I started talking. And
which
then,
makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah,
now,
right,
in retrospect, like and just like from your experience, when you found some of those things out and really understood what that was about, like what did that do for you?
Yeah, it was like made so much sense of why vocally I was so shy growing up and why I grabbed the flute and started playing. Right. So if you just looked at me as a child and of course we can change in the primary soul energies, but if that foundation is there as divine self-expression, but yet I'm very shy and introvert, I don't know. Just to get the words out was difficult. So I started playing the flute and I became so good so fast because it was a means of expressing.
Right. And it just felt really natural to you.
Yeah. And another soul energy, not everybody has a secondary, but my secondary is divine wisdom. And divine wisdom people inherently know there are universal laws of truth. You just know it. And when you see people that are making decisions against universal laws of truth, you're like, why are you doing that?
Yeah, why?
Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Right?
It just makes no sense. Yeah.
And you, Mr. Divine Love.
Yeah, I never really would have, pegged myself for that. But it is what it is, like when
Divine
you kind of understand
self-love.
it really did explain a lot. And it explained some of the latent talents that I had. Like, I've been a musician for a really long time and I love it. Like I love playing. I love expressing in that way and being a part of the community. But really the hidden talent that I've had for so long that I just never really valued, I think, or really acknowledged. I think acknowledge is a better word for it. I never really acknowledged. It was just like, is just my state of being. So divine love will be like a lot of people out about listening to this are this too. It's fairly common, but certainly for, the people, the sort of person who would click on a life purpose.
Yeah. Right.
It's probably,
little divine love in you
around this. Yeah. And it's a natural healer.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know how to acknowledge that people would just hang out with me and feel better. But
they did, right?
Yeah, they always did.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not always, but very often like, I was, the person that people would come to with their challenges and stuff, especially when I was a manager for, personnel manager for Detroit Symphony. Like I was the guy between, the musician, between the musicians and the management. So any of the issues that came up on stage with very intense personalities, that came to my desk and my,
what is when a divine self-love person's out of balance, what happens?
Well, nothing good. Nothing good.
A lack of self-love.
Well, yeah, that's a big one.
Seeking of unconditional love.
You're always looking for somebody else to give you that, that I'm, is just so looking for outside. And so that transition for me was really powerful of just kind of understanding, well, if I can give my, the more that I can just give that to myself, the more naturally that gift can shine.
Yeah, nice.
And it's love, like it's love energy. So, when I get into like forcing and willing things, really intensely, that can definitely cause a problem because it's really counter to that natural, easy flow of love. Right. And then that's like love energy.
Yeah.
So that, relationship things, like just looking for that outside of yourself, like that's a really big one. And then wanting to heal everybody, so the kind of like the martyr thing that can come along with that. No, it's like, oh my God, never do that. It's terrible. So painful. But you're like, you just want to like, your natural tendency is to want to help and heal. And you'll do it at your own expense, like time and time again. And then you'll I could say this for myself, is like try to help people. I know I got the goods, like somewhere in there,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in me, I knew that piece, like
Yeah.
I got the goods and I can help. I just didn't know how to articulate it or really not acknowledge it, but I knew it. And then I'd give like, to help somebody, like give them the best advice ever. And they do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And then I would resent them, or they would resent me.
Yeah.
And it would create all this weirdness and stuff. So that's another one that divine love will do a lot.
And some of the other energies, divine compassion, similar to love, but really like a person with divine compassion loves the earth energy, that sort of goddess energy. There's divine order, right? So you can imagine someone who really wants balance, and wants to like avoid conflict, but they're so organized. That's divine order. Divine power is like a leader. I'm going to get it done no matter what. Nobody's in my way. So it's fascinating. And one can really only know at a deep level their soul energy if they're able to go in and ask their higher self. But you can see how these different attitudes around them and descriptions start to appeal to us, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just knowing that when it really hits home, because a little piece of you will identify with probably all of them to some degree. Yes. But there's that one that you're just like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Like divine truth. I mean, if you're divine truth and you're like out there around people who are telling lies, or you're telling lies, or whatever, it is not going to feel good.
Yeah. Integrity is really big for that. Like when you're out of integrity, it's just terrible.
Right.
Sense of justice, but those divine truthers, like you can get so easy into black and white kind of thinking, and this is right and that's wrong, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and then they get real judgy and fragment their soul.
Right, but when you really turn that on, and that person really understands that every person has their own truth that they're living, and have respect and honor for that, like you become the total spiritual warrior who can like totally stand in your truth and just lead the charge, and let everybody follow you in their own truth. Like let those truths overlap and resonate. Yeah. So that's number one. Like once you know that, obviously there's a lot more to the story, like tons more, and different way, soul is actually a complex thing. But understanding that at least the fundamental energies, to understand what some of your innate gifts and talents are behind that, that's super important.
Right.
Look, the Indian culture did this with the caste system in a very different way. It was in a certain way, is a more rudimentary system. I think
didn't work out so well, but
why it didn't work out though is because they did away with the individual, and you would get born into a certain caste. And that wasn't the design of that system. The design of that was to help people do what is in their nature.
Yeah.
And that is why knowing your soul energy is so incredibly important, right? It goes beyond personality. It's deeper than personality. Your personality actually grows out of that energy.
Right.
And when you are in alignment with that, you're in your gifts and talents. And that was the whole idea behind the caste system. Except then it became like, oh, well, you're just born into this caste system. And that it made people go against the grain.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no reason that, the worker class, a Brahmin can't be born into a worker class. Like,
yeah, I see.
So then they get stuck in that. And then there's this person who's got this really calling to be like a Brahmin or to be like a warrior, and they're like stuck in the worker class. So,
got it. Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Just poorly executed.
Yes, poorly, but not the divine soul energies.
Open source.
It's
the information is there. You need to know how to access it and get accurate information. But other than that, like it's there. And once you understand it, it becomes really easy.
Right.
That's why that's the first step.
Right.
Because you got to at least get pointed in the right direction and start going with the flow. Because if you're just constantly going against the grain, it's super tiring.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Why is it so important right now?
What?
To know our life's purpose.
Well, again, we're back to the opportunity that we have. We're at a very unique time. I think that goes without saying. Things are moving faster than ever.
Yeah.
It's a tumultuous time. And what that means to me is that there's just huge opportunity to help every human make really meaningful strides towards their highest and best.
Yeah.
And when you're in that and you're lit up in your true purpose, like way beyond like what you're doing for a living, you know, or anything, like it's like how you're affecting the humans in your life.
Yeah.
And when you're lit up and doing what you're here to do, and you have that kind of abundant energy and that kind of like clarity and that kind of like steadfastness, you become incredibly powerful, unshakable.
Truth.
And people need that.
Yeah. They need that force around them.
They need that.
Yeah.
They need that. It lights
the planet needs that.
It lights it up in them.
Right.
Are there people out there that will say like, oh, that's just them. Like I could never do that. Of course. But there's, I think personally, there's even more people who look at that and be like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Exactly.
You know, and there's something in them that lights me up and that just really gets me going. And I'm going to get fired up and I'm going to do that too.
And when you're in that position, I mean, look, like attracts like, right? The whole frequency thing, whatever your frequency is, you will attract other people, places, times, events, situations of the same frequency. So think about it when you're stepping into your life's purpose and you have that empowerment, you have that positivity, you have that like internal strength, you will attract more people and opportunities like that around you, which is going to feel freaking amazing.
Yeah, it
does. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, it's awesome.
And we've seen it in our lives for sure.
Yeah, and certainly in you know so many people that we've worked with. I still get messages from time, really pretty regularly of people. They're like, dude, you know, like you look really happy. Like
what's going on?
What happened to you? You know, because they knew me back when or whatever, you know, on Facebook and that. And I'm just like, well, like, you know. It's really
found my life's purpose.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to get all like now I'm doing a whole podcast on it, but you know, like I don't want to get all woo woo on it. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, that's really a big part of it. Yeah. And because of that, I've been able to design a life that really feels right to me and is exciting and is fun and is connective and lets me do what I'm here to do. And like, I just think that's awesome. I think everybody should have that. Like everybody
has it.
Everybody
it
can
come
do
out.
it. Anybody can do it, you know? And that's how I look at it too. Like, I'm nothing special.
Yeah. Oh, sure you are.
I mean, in that respect, like I'm a human being, you know, I have gifts and talents like every other human being.
Yeah.
Have I done a massive amount of work? Absolutely. And lots of study and reflection. And this is something that I've pursued relentlessly because it was that important to me. But that doesn't make me special.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is something that everybody can do.
Yeah.
And whether you're here to affect one person's life, change one life, or whether you're here to affect thousands or millions, like it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's about you being you and doing what you're here to do.
I love that.
So.
All right. So how can we further help our listeners out there?
Well, step 2 is clearing blocks.
Clearing blocks.
Yeah. Like once you know that, that's cool. But you will inevitably run into choices that you'll make that are absolutely counter to not only your energy, your gifts, your purposes, but also counter to your higher self and your full potential, you know, and that's just blocks, like imprints, blocks,
negative programs,
beliefs, all those kinds of things. Those negative programs will express as like that one podcast we talked about, the need to be right. Like that's a big one.
It's a big one.
But it'll express as all kinds of things like limitations. Lack is huge. Like just getting stuck in lack and just, I don't
not
have
enough. There's not enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's an important one to actually address, is because that's one of the big stoppers is I need to be somewhere else before I can pursue that. I need to have a certain amount of money before I can pursue my life purpose. Like I can't think about that right now.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it's
the opposite.
It's the exact opposite.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
if you don't think about that, you're going to stay in lack and you're going to stay stuck and you're not going to have the kind of success that you really could.
Right.
Where if you flip the formula and you're like, you know what, I'm going to figure this out. Like, I'm not going to stop and just go into a cave and not earn any money and then come out broke and then start from scratch. You know, you keep going what you have going.
Yeah.
And then start to put these pieces together and get yourself aligned, and new opportunities will open up for you that you would never open up otherwise.
Exactly.
And I don't know if that sounds woo-woo to some people or what,
it's
but
the truth, man. When
truth.
you're aligned and you're living your life's purpose, your soul's purpose, you can't not have massive abundance, happiness, connection, just a great life.
Yeah, things just start to spontaneously manifest in a way more easier way, and you're more attuned to the opportunities.
Yes.
So you can take
way
actions
more
on
open.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super, that's really big.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that brings us to number 3.
Yeah.
Is listening to your intuition.
Oh, I love listening to my intuition.
We should do a whole podcast
We
on
will
intuition.
do a whole
I'm putting
podcast
that
on
on
intuition.
the list, actually.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that right on the list. But yeah, you have to listen to your intuition, because if you try to do this and figure everything out in your head,
right.
One, it's not going to make a huge amount of sense. Some of it'll be really discombobulated. Some of it'll make sense, and you'll be like, yeah, it totally makes sense. And then others of it would be like, no, I'm totally not doing that. It doesn't make any sense. You got to listen to,
and you have to take action. It's not just hearing it. When you hear it, then you've got to do what your intuition is telling you to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's step 4, actually.
Okay.
But listening to the intuition, that's why you have to clear some of the blocks first too, is because when you have those blocks in place, it's hard to hear the intuition. It's hard to really trust it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the goal with intuition is to be able to put money on it.
Right.
You got, for you to sit down at a roulette table, plunk $100 down,
black or white, or black or red.
Yeah,
black
and
or
just trust your intuition. Yeah. Like, that's the kind.
Fun.
It is really fun. That's the kind of trust that you want to have in your intuition, though, and to just be able to listen to the guidance, however that comes to you. Some people see things, like things show up that they see. Some people just hear the voice.
Some people just know. There's just a knowing.
It's just knowing, yeah. And it's just a big yes, and they just go, like they feel it in their body or whatever.
Right.
But ultimately, it's all of those things. Like, those are all different special skills that everybody has. Like, it's not like extra sensory perception.
Right.
It's higher sensory perception. So you're attuned to more subtle energies.
Right.
But that's absolutely key. Like, you got to be willing to follow your intuition, because...
So you're saying step 3 is listen, and step 4 is to
take action.
Take action in the world.
Yep.
Yeah. Perfect.
Take action immediately.
Yeah. Don't wait. The universe is freaking fast, as our friend Carl Harvey says. It's freaking fast.
It's so funny to hear him say that.
Yeah.
What a cool guy.
Oh, so cool.
But this is where one of the biggest things, people get that far, they know, right? They feel pretty aligned. I've seen this one actually fairly frequently. They feel pretty aligned, maybe not fully aligned, but pretty aligned. They feel fairly clear, and then they get the message, and then they're like, oh, I'll do that later.
Oh, painful. Don't wait. And then it winds up, they wind up having to circle back around. Yeah. And it just slows things down so much. Yeah.
Like, when you get the intuition to call that person, you call that person right now.
Right then.
Right now. Send them a text, call them, whatever it is. Especially if your business relies on it, like, do that now.
Right.
Because if you wait, the moment passes, and then you're going to go through this still there to a certain degree, but you're going to go through this whole rigmarole of trying to get them. Is that the right word? Rigmarole?
Rigmarole is quite possibly a word.
Google that one. I don't know where that came from, but you're going to go through this whole thing of like then trying to get on the phone with them and passing ships and all this kind of stuff. And notice, like, when you hesitate, they'll start to hesitate too. Right. And so the exchange happens. So, like, that's just one example, but that'll show up in all different areas. You take action immediately.
Right.
You listen to the voice, take an action, right? Just listen, action, like, just keep doing that, right? And just your life will speed up. You'll get into a flow with momentum, and it'll just be so much easier. And then all the pieces can start to come together. But so many people I've seen that are like, I feel like I'm doing what I'm here to do, but I'm broke, or, I'm stuck in this one area or whatever. And it's like, you're not listening, you're not taking action.
Yeah.
So that's cool if you feel like you know you're doing what you're here to do. But if you're destitute,
Yeah.
then you are not fully in your life purpose,
Yeah.
because that you're being in abundance when you're doing that.
Right.
And it's good that you're doing what you're here to do, but for you to be also creating abundance around it, because abundance begets more abundance, and you can use that to serve your mission. So that's super important.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's basically know your soul energy, clear your blocks.
Yeah.
Listen to your intuition
and take action.
Take action.
Love it. Well, we have another helpful tool. Tell everybody what it is if they want to get a bit further into understanding their life purpose.
I created a virtual training for this that basically walks you through those steps in some more depth and detail, and really gives you a little bit more comprehensive look at it. And it's actually on my website. It's at nickhansinger.com/peak-performance.
Peak-performance. It'll be in the show notes too, but nickhansinger.com/peak-performance.
Yeah. And then
it's a free training.
Yeah. You just opt in for it and check it out. It's a great video, really good video. And then if you want, there's another steps after that if you want to pursue it further. So that's it. That's really the nutshell of life purpose and why it's important.
I love it. Hey, do we have any questions for this week?
We actually do.
Let's take a question.
This is a question back to the meditation podcast a few weeks ago. So let's see here. Let me pull it up.
Great question. Yeah. As he's reviewing the question, if you listen to that podcast, and if you didn't, please go back and listen. I think you'll really, really like it. But we talked about how meditation is actually not a practice. It's an arrival. Because I'm sure most of you have heard, I practice meditation. It is not a practice. It's an arrival. So a really smart gal wrote in and said, I need a little clarity on this.
Right. First, she said, I think you guys are great. Thanks for all the work you do. Thank you. That's so cool. Like, I really dig that. Anyway, the question, more importantly, just listened to the podcast on meditation and thought, wow, great way to explain the process. Thank you again. One question though, doesn't it take practice to get to the point where you can meditate? I tell my students that yoga is a practice. So apparently she's a yoga teacher, because it's the process one goes through on the path of meditation/peace. Isn't meditation the purpose of yoga? Therefore, one must practice yoga to meditate.
Great question.
It is a great question. Like, there's kind of a few different layers to it, but it's a really cool question. The yoga perspective is always really, really cool and interesting to me. So, isn't the purpose of yoga, well, let's take it piece by piece. Doesn't it take practice to get to the point where you can meditate? It takes basically clearing blocks to get to the point where you can meditate. Like, the mind needs to be quieted. And when you meditate before you're ready and you try to wrangle that sucker to the ground, you're basically going to wind up suppressing your mind and beating it into oblivion and trying to basically beat it into submission. If you think like a little kid who's kind of acting up and the parents constantly just smacking it on the head,
right?
And being like, dude, no, do it different.
That doesn't work.
Like what's that kid going to grow up like?
Yeah.
But that's basically what you do to your mind when your mind is restless and you try to constantly try to meditate it into peace. And then you use that so you said, this was a really important, there it is, really important piece about meditation is that if you can't just gently dismiss the thoughts that do come up, you're probably just not ready or in a place to be meditating. Right. So in that respect, doesn't it take practice? I don't really think about it as practice.
Well, there is the physical yoga practice, and I totally get that. And we had said this in the podcast. There's a whole bunch of things that happen that take us to the arrival of meditation. And so for some people, it might be the practice of yoga, the practice of running, the practice of studying, whatever it is to elevate their being to a place where their neutrality can actually sit and begin to contemplate one thing.
Right. And I totally get it from that perspective. Here's why I don't think about it as a practice is basically because everything in your life is a practice. Because how you do anything is how you do everything.
This is true.
And so then you can make a practice out of absolutely anything. You can take the simplest thing and decide to be truly excellent at it.
Right.
And that is a practice that refines your character and will help if you choose the right things to calm the mind,
Right.
to release some of those things that are pushing you and pulling you in every which way. So the reason I don't think about it as practice is because anything could be a practice. And if you really think about it as a practice, you wind up just like practicing your whole life.
Right.
Live your life,
Yeah. So it's really the practice of life and elevating ourselves that leads us to arriving at meditation.
Right. And you do that through action, right? You do that through your being in the world. And it's really just, bringing more and more awareness to the things that cause you agitation, and then dealing with those things within yourself.
Yeah.
Right. The most people try to deal with agitation by fixing the external. That person's pissing me off, get away.
Yeah.
Which to a certain degree, like there's a place for that, but that's a whole other podcast in itself. But basically, like, if you do that without dealing with your own agitation, if you do that without removing the trigger that sets you off, then you've missed the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you've totally missed it.
Yeah.
Once you remove that, you can decide that person doesn't have a place in my life. Cool.
Awesome.
No problem.
Yeah. But there's not a judgment. There's just like a clear completion.
Yeah. This is not in line.
The agitation within is so important, everyone. That is the sign that something in you is definitely not ready to meditate.
Well, yes. Yeah. That's actually,
if you sit down agitated and trying to meditate to eliminate the agitation, it's not going to go well. Like, I'll tell you, I've been there. I've tried that. It's like...
Well, a lot of people will get an immediate fix from that.
Well, yeah, you might be breathing more. You settle down, like you're not screaming at anybody. You're like, okay, cool.
You're not solving the problem.
Yeah,
though. And that's really
right.
You want to solve that problem. You need to resolve that.
Right.
And so that's why I don't look at it as a practice.
Yeah.
You say yoga is a practice. Yeah. Yes. In one respect it is. In another respect, like
we're going to practice lifting our right leg up and stepping it forward. Like I practice my going upside down thingies.
See, and I just do it.
Well, there you go. So Kisma and Nick are sort of having a disagreement here, but
yeah,
I think we agree that there's something that happens before the arrival of meditation.
Absolutely. And but what I'm like, the only point that I'm really trying to make is that like, just do it. Right. When I'm out surfing, like I'm new to surfing, I just got beat up today. It was a little bit of a rough day on the water for me. But do I want to get better at it? Yeah. But
so you got to practice.
Yeah, but am I practicing, or if I'm just going out surfing? Am I trying to refine through the whole process? Like, absolutely. Do I want to get stronger at paddling the board, and more agile? Like, absolutely. Like, I want to do all of those things, but I don't look at it as practicing. I'm going to go out and have some fun. I'm definitely going to be very aware of the things that trip me up and things that I can refine to make myself more efficient so that I can catch more waves. But at the end of the day, I'm just out there surfing and having fun. And that's kind of how I look at life.
Oh, aren't you special? I guess the little flute player in me is coming out. Like, gotta practice. You gotta practice. Gotta do those scales.
Yeah. Fundamentals,
Fundamentals. Mastery. I think it's about mastering life and mastering ourselves.
Right. It's not like, if you come back to surfing, like, it's not about just going out there and just saying screw it, you know, and stuff like that's not how I approach it. But if somebody else does, like, that's cool too. But like, for me, it's like, I want to be good at it, you know, like the better I am, the more fun I can have with it. And that requires diligence.
Yeah, it does require dedication, commitment.
And dedication and commitment.
There's definitely a commitment. Yeah.
And, and so that's kind of why I look at it that way. Isn't meditation the purpose of yoga? No, that it's actually not. The purpose of yoga is
to arrive back to our original state.
Self-actualization, to know who you are.
When I get this, though, to arrive back to our original state, self-realization, and we just did a whole podcast on how meditation takes us to self-realization. So in essence, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with that.
All right.
And because then it's in the question right there. Isn't meditation the purpose of yoga? No, because meditation has a purpose. And the purpose of meditation is self-actualization.
Which is the absolute of yoga.
And that's actually one of the big pitfalls where people get stuck in making it about the meditation. And it's totally not about the meditation. That's why meditating without a purpose is useless.
Right. Right.
You know, it's not meditation has a very, very specific purpose.
Right.
And when you make it about the end, then you miss the point.
Yeah.
So the 4 yogas serve the process of calming the mind so that you can meditate.
And direct it to a single pointed focus.
Exactly. And then from that single pointed focus, then you can make the leap
into a self-actualized state. Good luck with that one, everyone.
Who you are. That's a big one. Yes. We'll do that podcast next year, you know?
Next lifetime.
Next lifetime.
How to become self-realized. 30 minutes or less. Hey, that'd be a great lead magnet on Facebook. I might try that. Okay, cool.
But I hope that clears that up a little bit. Like, and I hope everybody know, like, I don't want to get nitpicky about it, but it's kind of like when we talked about in the meditation thing, like if you kind of got to know what each piece does. And that's why I think it's an awesome question because it really brings up a few of those things and it helps to clarify. Because I can guarantee if you had that question, that other people had that same question.
Exactly.
Hopefully they're listening to it right now, but you articulated it really well. So kudos to that. And it's an excellent question for clarity. So thank you for asking that. It's a great question.
Yeah.
So I think that
it covers it.
That concludes.
Way to go. Thanks for being here, everyone. Super, super appreciate you. Don't forget to check out that little training about life purpose, nickhansinger.com/peak-performance. Right. And much love and appreciation. Namaste.
Go live your purpose, everybody. Namaste.